Okay, welcome to part 4. Today I'm going to talk to you about countertops. I'm going to show you a cheap, easy, very quick way to put in these good looking countertops in your kitchen or bathroom. I want to talk to you about cabinets and countertops. We know how expensive these are at the big box, and then you don't get them finished. And well, they're made out of cardboard now. They get wet and fall apart, and they're stapled and hot glued together. So we just built cabinets out of 2x4s. We got 8 foot of cabinet space here. We got a little 30-inch section on the end, and we're just going to put shelves here up top, so it'll be kind of an open face. And then we wanted a good countertop. Formica looks like Formica, and stone is quite expensive, and so we thought about pouring concrete countertops, but those are heavy and a pain. You got to bring them in here and mix it. So we went with an overlay again. So what we did is we just glued and screwed 2 sheets of MDF, which is just particle board. Same stuff you make speaker boxes out of it. It's about $40 a sheet at the box stores. And the Henry Feather Finish, which is just a floor patch compound. And it's water based. We mix it up in a pan and spread it and mud it on. This has had 2 coats. I'm going to go ahead and mix up a 3rd coat and get a 3rd coat on this and kind of show you the process to go through to get this on here. Okay, I'm going to show you some things you're going to need when doing these countertops like this. You're going to need some Henry Feather Finish, and this is sold over in the flooring department. It's an underlayment self-leveler. It is a cement finish, so it is considered a concrete. You're going to need a mud pan and probably a 6, 8, or a 10-inch knife. The wider the knife is, the less seams that it makes, and you're going to need a little fresh, clean water. You're probably going to need an orbital sander and some 80 grit sandpaper, and some 120 and maybe even some 220 when you get it finished. If you've ever sheetrock mudded, this is going to be easier for you, especially if you've ever used the powdered sheetrock mud, like the hot mud, 20, 40, or 60 minute, whatever it is. So this comes in a powder, and I try to mix it about the consistency of sheetrock mud. I'm just going to pour out and fill the pan about halfway up. And it goes pretty far. I would say that, if you're going to put it on good and thick, probably you can do it in as few as 3 coats. Maybe most people will take 4 coats. I'm a pretty good sheetrock mudder. I can do it in 3 pretty well, and then touch it up. So just some of that in the pan, and I'm aiming for the consistency of what I really think sheetrock mud should be, or what I think it was similar to what it was going to look like in the bucket. And I just mix it with my 6-inch knife. And then when you mix it, you want to make sure you get all the small particles completely mixed up. If you leave any of the dry powder in there, it's going to leave a mark as you smear it across the surface. That dry powder will leave a obvious mark in it. So you want to make sure you get it mixed up good. As I mix this up, you can see it's still gritty. It's got the balls in it, or them are dry spots. You want to get that out completely. Okay, there's already 2 coats on here, so I'm in the 3rd coat. When I mix this up and spread this on here, if I use big motions, it'll get really smooth, but it won't be very cloudy. So on my 3rd and 4th coat, I'm going to use what I call small touches or little touches, which I would call a big touch, something like this, where I'm pulling it and leaving a big flat area like that, right? What I would call a small touch is I would call just to hear it and I'm leaving these different marks. Now, believe it or not, when I go to sand this and put a finish on it, those will show through. Now what I'm looking at is I'm looking and seeing if there's any imperfections in there, and I'm actually filling up the imperfections with my new mud, just like I would if I was sheetrock mudding a wall. But I'm doing lots of small touches instead of long touches. Now when you're putting it on there in the first couple of coats, long touches, long dragging marks is fine, but when you want a good coat and you want it to be cloudy, you want to see that texture that concrete is. I mean, you can get these perfectly smooth, but it's almost going to look like it's a solid surface plastic. It's going to be, just consistent as it can be. The imperfections in it, or the marks in it of the concrete, is really what shows that it is concrete. So you see I'm just doing small spots, and I'm looking for any imperfections or any indentations and filling it in anywhere that I feel it's not consistent. that I can see any mark. And of course I'm going back over at the edges too. Now the corners, the outside corners, you got to pay attention to what you're doing, because you don't want to get that corner too thin, because you want to be able to sand it off and still not expose that outside corner. But it's okay if you leave a little sticking out, because as it gets about halfway dry, about the consistency of soap, I'll come back, and if I leave that corner ridge there, I'll come back and be able to scrape that off. This Henry Feather finish, because it's a cement-based product, it takes acid concrete stain very well. In fact, it takes it just as well as regular concrete, if not better. It has a lot to do with how you choose what kind of top or top coat you put on it. So some people want to be able to set hot things on it. If you're going to want to set hot things on it, then you want to use something that the pan won't burn. And about the only thing a pan won't burn is a wax. So you can buff a wax into it, and you can set hot stuff on it. But when you wax it, sometimes you have to re-wax it to keep it finished. What you don't want to do is you don't want to put, before you get it completely sealed, you want to make sure you don't get any oils on it, right? Anything like a kerosene or anything that's got any kind of oil in it, because it will soak into the concrete and it will stain it. What I use is I just use a clear coat driveway sealer, and then I use spar urethane on top of that. Spar urethane is considered to be a marine grade or a boat grade urethane. So that's what I've got on my house. But it's sufficiently hard. I mean, I've had tools land on mine and cut on mine. It's not really going to take cutting like a chopping block. So when I put the edges on, I try to pull it up and leave the the extra rolled up the top. And when I do that, I'll come back at the bottom, cut the bottom off, whatever's hanging over the bottom, and then I will pull it from that corner back onto it. And that kind of gives me I don't mess my edge up too bad. You see, and I'm moving that corner back and forth. And it does sand pretty good. And it's consistent, there's no aggregate in it or no rocks in it. So you're not gonna have a problem sanding it and shaping it. So you see when I do this edge, and I mash it, it rolls it up. It rolls it up. See this sticking up high on the top here? Let's go all the way across that and give me a good, even application. Now I'll let that roll up the top. And then I'll just take the knife and lay it flat across the top and come back and just cut that off. And there's going to be maybe a little bit of burr left there on that outside corner. I want to get that bottom one. But that little bit of burr will sand right off with an orbital sander. And just don't try to sand it till it's completely turned into its light color. And that lets you know it's completely dry, because it'll gum up your sander if it's not completely dry. Okay, so when you go to sand this, Don't freak out if you go ahead and sand through on the corners or if you sand through in a spot. That just lets you know that you're just a little thin there. It's no big deal. If you sand through, you just mix up some more in the pan and you make sure you put it back on that area thick, and you ought to be able to sand it back down, and it's like it never happened. So as you're letting it dry around the edges, you take a good damp rag. There's a point, you just got to kind of stay with it and see how dry it's getting. Once it gets a little bit about like soap, it's a good time to take a damp rag and you just wipe those corners off, and you can rub them smooth too. If you're wiping too much off, you can tell it, you just let it dry a little longer, right? You want it to be pliable but not be able to wipe it off. Look at those corners, I mean, they turned out pretty good there. Couple points to remember is, the big strokes for the smoother, more consistent finish, and if you want it cloudy or more inconsistent, you want to touch it with the little strokes. The remainder of the process is going to look like this. I'm going to wait for this to dry and turn completely its light color. Then I will get after it with 80 grit sandpaper. After I get after it with 80 grit sandpaper and get it down as consistent as I want it, if there's any spots that I feel that need more, I might mix up a smaller batch and touch it up. If not, once I hit it with the 80, I'll move on to 120 or 150, and I'll finish it up with 220. And then after finishing it with 220, I'll use a concrete sealer on this. And I just use a big box like a driveway sealer. You can use the wet look if you want to get the, obviously the shiny look. I'll use a sealer like that, and then once that sealer dries, that water-based concrete sealer, I spray spar urethane over the top of that, and that's also in the big box stores, and it's a marine grade urethane, so it really protects from oils or anything sinking in. So the Henry Feather Finish is a cement-based product. It may be only an 1/8 inch thick, but it is cement and it is very durable, right? So once you drop the sink in it and you can't see the edges anymore, you can't tell this is not a monolithic pour. It's going to take stain, it's going to take sealer, just like normal concrete. If you think about the advantage of this, if you go and buy cabinets from the box store, they're so cheaply made nowadays, put together with staples and hot glue, that they won't support a monolithic pour. You'd have to go in there and beef them up and then put some sort of form up here, which is a lot of work, and then you'd have to be packing bags in here, mixing up in a wheelbarrow and pouring this. This is a much simpler, much faster, and it's a smoother finish. There's no aggregate here. I've had this in my house since 2006. I've got first-hand experience with this. Not only this, but I've got countertops like this all over the place. Many of them I've done that are indoors and outdoors, and it's held up great. Taking a look at the outside, I want to point out a few things to you. We did decide to cut some corners on the trim. We didn't get cedar. We got just pine, but we did coat the pine all sides with Thompson's water seal and stain. We stained it and then Thompson water sealed it. On the soffits there, we just used 1/2 inch plywood and we stained it, and Thompson's water sealed it as well. And as you look across the front here, you'll notice, you see the stones leaning up against the house. I just leaned those up there, just trying to show you that we are going to attach stones across the bottom of the house. And the surface bonding cement will also take the mortar very well to attach the stones. You can see that the surface bonding concrete has held up well. There is no cracking at the post. We've been through some severe weather. We've also been through a local tornado and some really cold temperatures. Okay, let's take a look at this door. We wanted to kind of dress the entryway up, and the exterior doors are pretty expensive. And so what we did was we just bought some 2x8s. I think this has got about 6 or 8 2x8s in it at about $6 a piece, right? So we got less than $60 in lumber in this door. Just some gate hardware, and these are some decorative nail heads that look like they've been, beat in there, but it's really just a small nail with a large head on it. We just laid them out on there. We haven't done the trim there yet. And we're debating on doing a round portal here with a black wrought iron, around the window. But, for a $65, $70 door, I think it turned out pretty good. Just one of the ways, take an opportunity to dress it up, customize it a little bit, and we put it on spring-loaded hinges so it would snap back shut. Okay, let's talk about the surface bonding cement and the outcome and the results on that. Now, if you don't know about the surface bonding cement, make sure you check out our previous videos. We got a video dedicated to that. But I'm really happy with the surface bonding product. First of all, we've had some extreme weather outside this year. You know, it's been sub-zero, snow, sleet, lots of rain. I've got no cracking on the outside and got no cracking on the inside. And the surface bonding cement made a pretty good texture, took paint pretty good. I wanted it to look like a wainscot. So, you know, painted it to brown. And here at the transition, you know, I've got a plate here where the framing comes up. The plate's glued to the top of the concrete wall with just liquid nails. And I left that sheetrock 1.5 inches up, which is the thickness of it, you know, the plate. And so I could nail my trim to it. And it just made it where I put my trim up and hang my drywall right up from there. Made it an easy, nice finish and easy to set the drywall on, not have to hold it up against the wall. I want to point out our loft area and do a little explanation here. I needed a place to put a water tank. I needed a place to put some mechanical, maybe electrical and plumbing. Space in this tiny house is very valuable, so we put a loft over the kitchen. Now, standard height is 6'8" for a door opening. We dropped it down because of our ceiling height is just 12 foot in here, and we want to be able to get a tank up there. So we're just at 6'6" there, but it's still pretty comfortable to walk underneath there. We just did it out of 2x4s, and we put joist hangers underneath it. And you can see we spray painted the joist hangers black to give it a look to it. And we wanted to leave the wood open and exposed, so we sanded all the numbers and letters off of the 2x4s, and we stained them, and then we Thompson water sealed them. And we used the same tongue and groove 6-inch plank that we used for the ceiling. We use that over the top of those 2x4s for the decking up there for that. And what we're going to do later on is we're about a foot back from this front edge, we're going to build a wall. So, you know, we're going to build a wall here about straight up to the ceiling on top of this. It goes up to the ceiling above to separate these areas. And we're going to put some vents in that, and we're going to thermal siphon off the stove and heat our water tank. If you watch my channel, you know I'm a big stove builder, so make sure you check that video out. But the reason we're putting our water tank up here is we're going to have a gravity-fed water system in here. We're going to have a combination of 2 water sources. One's going to be a rain catch system, and the other one's going to be coming right out of the creek with some filters. But we're going to put the water storage, 200 gallons interior, up in the attic for water flow, and we'll have a 500-gallon catch tank for outside, feeding the tank that's in here, so it's, you know, freeze-proof. In order to save space here in the kitchen, we made the kitchen, really it's the hallway to the bathroom. It worked out pretty good. We used double doors here. One of them's a closet. That closet is you know, it's about 4 foot by 2 foot deep, so it's a pretty good sized closet. We don't have the room here for full swing doors, so we're going to use 2 doors, not bifold doors, but, you know, like saloon doors that, you know, take up half the space, and so we don't have to have the big swing. So that was our solution there. Shot of the bathroom. Now I've got a shower going in here, and I've got a sink, and I don't have sewer system, and I don't have a septic tank. So how am I going to get rid of that water? And I've also got a composting toilet that's going to go right here where I'm standing. So if you're interested in greywater systems, alternative ways to get rid of this water, make sure you come back and check out that episode. Okay, that's it for part 4. Appreciate you guys coming back and checking it out. Some of the things we're going to be doing here in the future, we're going to be finishing this countertop, finishing the cabinets here. We're going to be putting in the toilet, working on the fireplace. So you make sure you come back and check those episodes out as well.